I remember that morning as clearly as if it were etched in stone. An ordinary day in Chicago when my life seemed as neatly arranged as the numbers on an audit spreadsheet. I am Joaquin Moore, 28 years old, working as an auditor for a large firm in the heart of downtown. Every day I woke up at 6 a.m., brewed coffee in the spacious kitchen of our suburban villa, where sunlight often streamed through the large glass windows, illuminating the polished wooden floor. Deanna, my wife, 27 years old, was still curled up under the blanket, her long black hair spilling across the pillow. She's an elementary school teacher who always greeted the morning with a gentle smile. And Leah, our 6-year-old daughter, would usually come pattering out of her room, throw her arms around my legs and giggle. "Daddy, I want grilled cheese today," she'd say, and I always indulged her, cutting the sandwich into a heart shape just to see her smile. That life was so peaceful that sometimes I wondered whether I truly deserved it. We had a comfortable house with a small garden out back where Diana grew roses and Leah ran around with her ball. We weren't fabulously wealthy, but we were stable. That was the word I always used to describe us. Then everything shattered with a single phone call. I was sitting at my desk, surrounded by financial reports, when the phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, and a cold voice on the other end said, "Mr. Joaquin Moore, this is Chicago Central Hospital calling. Your father, Mr. Wade Moore, has been brought here in critical condition. You should come immediately." My heart stopped. My father? He lived alone on the outskirts of the city, still healthy, rarely even catching a cold. I sat frozen for several seconds, the hand holding the phone trembling, my mind blank. "What? How is my father? What happened?" I stammered. The voice simply repeated, icy and detached, "Please come right away." I bolted out of the office like a gust of wind, not even pausing to explain to my boss. My heart pounded, sweat poured down my back despite the chilly Chicago air. The entire drive I kept telling myself, "He'll be fine. He just fainted. Dad's tough." But deep down, a vague terror was strangling me. When I arrived at the hospital, it was already too late. The doctor led me into the room and said in a flat voice, "We're very sorry. Mr. Wade suffered a sudden massive heart attack. We did everything we could." I stood rooted to the spot, staring at my father's body lying motionless beneath a cold white sheet. His face looked peaceful, as if he were merely sleeping, but those tightly closed eyes would never open again. I collapsed beside the bed, touching his ice-cold hand. I whispered his name over and over, tears streaming uncontrollably. The departure was so sudden, without any warning. I never got to say a final word, never thanked him for raising me, never apologized for all the petty arguments. The pain crushed my chest until I could barely breathe. I sat there for hours, my mind in chaos, memories flooding back. Evenings when he read by the fireplace, the times he taught me to ride a bike, and the loneliness he always kept hidden. I had to force my emotions down to arrange the funeral. There were no siblings or close relatives, it was just me. I called Diana, my voice shaking. "Honey, Dad's gone. I need you." She rushed over and held me tight. "I'm here, love. We'll get through this." Leah didn't fully understand. She just looked confused and asked, "Where did Grandpa go, Daddy?" I forced a smile, stroked her hair, and said, "Grandpa went far away, but he loves you very much." The days of funeral preparations passed in a numb haze. I handled the paperwork, chose the casket, notified the neighbors. Everything felt like a bad dream I desperately wanted to wake from. The day of the funeral arrived under a light Chicago drizzle, as if the sky itself were weeping. A heavy atmosphere enveloped the small suburban cemetery. Only a handful of people came to pay their respects. My wife's family, a few neighbors who had been close to Dad, and some of his old colleagues. There were no lavish flowers or long eulogies, just painful silence. Deanna's parents, Franklin and Mariana West, were also present. They owned a major conglomerate, West Industries, and always carried themselves with refined elegance in expensive suits and polished manners. But today, the grief on their faces looked strangely artificial. Franklin stood with his arms crossed, eyes not on the coffin but constantly scanning the surroundings with cold vigilance. Mariana dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, yet her gaze remained sharp and devoid of warmth. Every now and then they shot glances at me filled with undisguised contempt and disdain. I felt each look like icy needles piercing my skin. I had grown used to it ever since the day I entered their family as a son-in-law, and today was no different. I simply bowed my head silently before my father's coffin, maintaining composure, swallowing all the suffocation and suspicion in silence. Dad lay there, his face gaunt from years of solitude. He had never spoken much about the past, only that my mother died in an accident when I was very young. I wondered, had he been terribly lonely? Had I been a terrible son? Tears rolled down my cheeks, mingling with the rain. Then something strange happened. Through the misty curtain of rain, I noticed several people in black standing scattered around the cemetery. They didn't approach, just stood motionless, their eyes fixed on my father's coffin. They weren't neighbors or friends. They were strangers, like ghosts. One tall man wearing sunglasses despite the rain. Another holding a black umbrella, his hand never leaving his coat pocket. Their presence intensified the unease rising inside me. Who were they? Why were they here? I glanced at Franklin and saw him looking in their direction too before quickly turning away. Was I imagining things? Or was something wrong? The funeral ended quickly. People left, leaving me standing alone by my father's freshly dug grave. Diana hugged Leah and whispered, "Come home soon. I'll take her back first." I nodded, but my heart was leaden. Afterward, I drove to Dad's small house on the outskirts. The old house had faded paint and an overgrown garden. Stepping inside, emptiness and coldness enveloped me. The lingering scent of old books and coffee, everything reminded me of him. I began sorting through his belongings. Notebooks, a few family photos, personal items. Each object felt like a knife twisting in old wounds. Then I stood before the room my father had always kept locked. The heavy wooden door with its sturdy mechanical lock had, for all these years, existed in only one state for me: absolutely forbidden. Not even I nor anyone else had ever been allowed inside. Now, standing in front of that door, my emotions churned. Grief mixed with curiosity and dread. What was this room hiding? Why had Dad been so secretive? My trembling hand reached for the lock, my heart racing. Perhaps the time had come for me to learn the truth. But deep down I was terrified. Terrified that once this door opened, everything would change forever. I took a step back, exhaled sharply, trying to calm myself. My father's small house on the outskirts of Chicago had always carried an air of age and neglect, like a faded old painting. Wade Moore had been 65 when he passed, living alone here for decades. He had completely separated himself from my life, not out of anger or resentment, but simply because that was the way he chose to live. I remember it clearly. Ever since my mother died when I was little, Dad withdrew into himself like a snail retreating deep into its shell. This house, with its once white walls now yellowed, its crooked weathered roof tiles, was his private world. No close neighbors ever dropped by, no parties, no long phone calls. He lived quietly, spoke little, and barely interacted with the outside world. He had no close friends, no social connections. Just a man who had grown accustomed to solitude, sitting by the window reading old newspapers every day, brewing strong black coffee, occasionally gazing out at the wild, overgrown garden behind the house. On the surface, he was nothing more than a retired accountant. He lived simply, spent modestly, and stood out in no way. He always wore the same old plaid shirts, scuffed leather shoes, and ate cold-cut sandwiches or canned soup for most meals. I once asked why he didn't move in with us into our spacious suburban villa, but he only shook his head. "I'm used to it here, Joaquin. You just take care of Diana and Leah." His voice was warm, but always veiled in a kind of fog, as if he were hiding something deep inside. I knew he was lonely, yet he never admitted it. Whenever I visited, he only asked about my auditing job, how Leah was doing in school, and gave a small smile when I told him how terrible Diana was at cooking. But behind that smile, I always sensed an invisible burden, The one thing that stood out in this otherwise ordinary house was the absolutely locked study at the end of the hallway. A thick oak door secured from the outside with a heavy, old-fashioned mechanical lock that looked like it belonged to another century. Only Dad was ever allowed inside. Even as a child, I was curious about it. I clearly remember when I was about 7 or 8 sneaking up to the door and pressing my ear against it, trying to hear something. There was nothing, just dead silence. When Dad caught me, he didn't yell, but his eyes turned unusually cold and stern. "Never come near this door again, Joaquin," he said, his voice low and warning. He stood silent for a long time before brushing it off and telling me not to ask any more questions. "That's my business. You don't need to know." I was scared and backed away, but the curiosity only grew over the years. Every time I accidentally walked past that door, Dad noticed immediately. His expression changed in an instant, as if an absolute boundary had been crossed. I used to think it was just a storage room for old accounting records, or maybe where he kept memories of Mom. But why lock it so tightly? Why be that vigilant? Even after I grew up, got married, and brought Diana and Leah to visit, the rule never changed. Diana once jokingly asked, "What's in that room, Dad? It looks so mysterious." He only gave an awkward smile and changed the subject. He adored his granddaughter. He always bought candy for Leah and told her fairy tales, but he still never let her go near the room. "Just stay here and play with Grandpa. Don't run around," he'd say gently but firmly. And whenever Diana looked at the door a little too long, he immediately grew wary, as if she were a stranger rather than his daughter-in-law. That extreme, almost obsessive protectiveness made me increasingly uneasy and confused. Why would a simple man like my father need such an inviolable private territory? I thought maybe he was haunted by Mom's death. Or perhaps he was hiding alcohol, but no, Dad never drank. In all my 28 years, he had never once let me touch that secret. I always felt he was carrying something incredibly heavy, like a boulder on his shoulders. Late at night, I sometimes heard him get up, pace the house, and stop in front of that room. The faint click of the lock, then silence. What did he do in there? Why wouldn't he share it with me? Now that he was gone, that unease surged stronger than ever. The men in black at the funeral, the wary looks from Franklin and Mariana, everything felt like scattered pieces of a puzzle I couldn't ignore. I decided I had to get inside. No more waiting. I searched the entire house, starting with Dad's bedroom. The old wardrobe held only simple clothes. Then the nightstand drawer, where I found a few old photos. My mother, young and beautiful, holding me as a baby. Tears welled up again. "Mom, what secret was Dad keeping in that room?" I whispered. After a while, I remembered the small bag of personal effects the hospital had given me when he died. His wallet, car keys, a few odds and ends. I opened it with trembling hands. Among some scraps of paper was an unusual old key, not for the car or the house, but a classic, intricately toothed key. My heart pounded. This had to be it. Maybe he had left it for me, even if he never said so. I returned to the door and took a deep breath. The key slid in perfectly. A soft click echoed through the silent house. The door creaked open slowly, as if issuing a final warning. Inside was just an ordinary study, an old wooden desk with a few blank sheets of paper, bookshelves full of accounting textbooks and old newspapers, and an ancient desktop computer with a bulky CRT monitor. Nothing special. No gold, no horrifying secrets. Just a dusty, modest office. I stepped in, closed the door behind me, feeling like an intruder in forbidden territory. The air was stuffy, thick with the smell of old paper and ink. I turned on the light. A dim yellow glow fell over everything. That very ordinariness only deepened my unease. Why had he kept a place like this locked for decades? It was the complete opposite of the extreme secrecy he'd shown. I sat down at the desk, ran my fingers over the keyboard. The computer still worked. The password was simple. My birthday. The desktop appeared almost empty, just a few harmless folders. But my gut told me there had to be more. I began searching every corner carefully, looking for anything out of place. Desk drawers, only pencils and blank notebooks. Bookshelves, accounting books, nothing strange. I stood up and walked around, heart racing. On the wall hung the only photo in the room, Dad, Mom, and me as a small child. My hands shook as I lifted it. Behind it, my God. A large wall safe, flush with the surface, cold metal with an electronic keypad lock. My heart thundered in my chest. This was it, the real secret. I tried every code I could think of in desperation. Dad's birthday, Mom's birthday, the house number. Nothing. Then in a flash of intuition, I entered my own full date of birth. A soft beep. The safe clicked open. Inside were thick stacks of documents, black and white photographs, several USB drives. And right on top, a yellowed envelope with a letter inside. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped it. A chill ran through my entire body. In that moment, I understood that my father's quiet, ordinary life had never been what it seemed. He wasn't just a retired accountant. Who was he really? What were these documents? I sank to the floor, opened the letter, my heart pounding as if it would burst. The real nightmare was only just beginning. I held the letter with trembling hands. The yellowed envelope was worn at the edges as if Dad had prepared it years ago. His familiar handwriting, slightly slanted, made my throat tighten. I opened it, and under the dim yellow light of the room, the lines appeared one by one. My dearest Joaquin, if you are reading this, then I am no longer here. I'm sorry for hiding the truth from you all these years, but I had to keep you safe. My heart clenched. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Had he known he was going to die? Why didn't he tell me? I kept reading, each word cutting like a knife into my chest. He told me who he really was, an undercover agent assigned to investigate corporations involved in money laundering and financial crime. He wasn't just ordinary Wade Moore. He had been part of a secret organization, operating deep in the underworld of money and power. I lived under the cover of an accountant to stay hidden, he wrote. But everything changed when one mission was compromised. The enemy hunted us down, and your mother, she died because of it. I froze, covering my mouth to stifle a sob. My mother, the gentle woman in the old photographs, hadn't died in a car accident as Dad had always told me. She had been killed because of his work. Memories of her flooded back, her warm smile, the afternoons she sang me to sleep. Why had he hidden this? Why had he let me live with that lie? He went on. After Mom's death, he was forced to take me and run. We changed identities to protect me while he continued the investigation in the shadows. We moved from city to city until we finally settled in Chicago. He chose a life of isolation, locking himself away in this small house, just so I could grow up normally. I never wanted you dragged into this cycle of life and death, he wrote. You deserve your own life with Diana and Leah. I sobbed uncontrollably, finally understanding everything. The strictness about the locked room, the cold look in his eyes whenever I got curious. It had all been to shield me. He had sacrificed his own happiness, lived in loneliness, just to keep me safe. Then came the most horrifying part. While gathering evidence against West Industries, the conglomerate owned by my in-laws, Franklin and Mariana West, he discovered that Diana and I were falling in love. Diana, the daughter of the very people he was investigating. I had enough evidence to bring them all down, he wrote. Money laundering, offshore dealings, billions moved across borders, everything is here. But for your happiness, I chose to keep the files and never turn them in. I didn't want you to lose the woman you love. I sat stunned, my whole body ice cold. West Industries, the mighty empire Franklin and Mariana had built, the one they paraded as respectable, was the center of a criminal network? And my father had stayed silent for me because of my love for Diana? The letter continued. In recent months, he had sensed danger closing in. They've grown suspicious of me, Joaquin. I can feel my time is running out. The shadows following me, the strange calls, I know they're coming for me. He hadn't dared tell me the truth, didn't want to drag me into the deadly game, so he left everything in the safe as a choice for his son if I ever found it. Decide for yourself, Joaquin, but be careful. They will not spare anyone connected to this. The letter ended with, "Live well, my son. I love you." I broke down, clutching the letter to my chest, crying like a child. His entire quiet, disciplined life had been about protecting me. The loneliness, the locked room, the secrets, everything was for me. Why did he have to bear it alone? Why hadn't I seen it sooner? I sat there for hours, tears soaking the floor. Memories crashed over me like a flood. The evenings he sat alone by the fireplace, eyes distant. The times he turned down dinner invitations saying he was busy. The way he looked at Diana, not with disdain, but with worry. Now I understood. He was afraid West Industries would pull me under. I wiped my face, forcing myself to calm down. I couldn't drown in emotion forever. I had to think clearly. These documents were lethal. If Dad was right, then my wife's family were the enemy. I had to act. I opened the stacks inside the safe, hands still shaking. First came detailed criminal records of several major corporations. Intricate money laundering schemes through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, secret transactions via Swiss banks, billions moved across borders. The numbers danced before my eyes. I'm an auditor, I knew exactly what they meant. Large-scale financial crime that could topple entire systems. Covert photos, CEOs meeting in dark hotels, exchanging briefcases of cash, signing deals under the table. How had Dad collected all this? What risks had he taken? Then I turned to a much thicker file and my blood ran cold. West Industries appeared on nearly every page. The cover page read, "West Industries, money laundering network through real estate and international investment." I flipped through frantically, heart pounding. Detailed flowcharts, dirty money from smuggling poured into construction projects, cleaned through stocks, then sent overseas. Attached photos, all taken in secret, high-level executives in clandestine meetings. One showed a fat man in a bar shaking hands with Franklin West. Another, Mariana West in a black car signing documents. Then receiving a thick envelope. The images were crystal clear, undeniable. Franklin with the fake smile I knew so well, negotiating with criminals. Mariana, ever haughty, accepting fat bribes. I sat paralyzed. My father had held evidence that could destroy an empire. West Industries, the source of my in-laws' wealth, was built on crime. And he had known, but stayed silent for me. My mind reeled. Did Diana know? No, she couldn't. She's gentle, loving, always defended me against her parents. But Franklin and Mariana, those contemptuous looks at the funeral, the cold vigilance. Now I understood. They suspected Dad. They knew he was a threat. Dad's sudden death, was it really natural? A chill ran down my spine. The men in black at the cemetery, were they West's people? Was I now in the middle of a conspiracy? I couldn't just sit here. I snapped into action. Carefully, one by one, I copied every file from the USB drives onto my laptop. Then I photographed every document, every photo with my phone, zooming in for perfect clarity. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stay calm. When I finished, I placed everything back exactly as it was, closed the safe, rehung the picture, and left the room looking untouched. No one could know I had been here. I turned off the light, locked the door, heart still hammering. I stepped out of the room feeling as if I'd emerged from an abyss with no way back. The house was pitch black now, the silence menacing. I walked outside. The cold Chicago wind slapped my face. And then, through the darkness, I saw them. The same black-clad figures from the funeral watching from a distance. One stood under a street lamp smoking, another leaned against a dark car. Their eyes were fixed on Dad's house. They knew, or at least they suspected. My pulse raced, but I understood the danger was now aimed directly at me. I couldn't panic. I kept my face calm, got into my car, and drove away silently, headlights slicing through the night. On the drive home, my mind spun. Diana, Leah, West Industries, everything was about to collapse. I had to protect my family. But how? The nightmare had only just begun. The drive home along the dark Chicago suburbs felt endless. Cold wind slipped through the cracked window, but I felt nothing except the icy chill spreading from my heart outward. Images of West Industries crimes kept flashing in my mind like slow-motion film reels looping without mercy. Swiss bank account numbers, clandestine million-dollar transfers, money laundering flowcharts routed through shell companies. Each one was a cold blade slicing through the last shreds of my trust. I'm an auditor. I live among numbers every day, but these weren't ordinary financial statements. They were evidence of monstrous crimes, dirty money from smuggling, bribes to public officials, cross-border transfers designed to conceal everything. Franklin West, my father-in-law, personally signing forged contracts. Mariana, my mother-in-law, caught in surveillance photos accepting briefcases of cash from scarred men in dimly lit bars. How was this possible? They had always stood at the pinnacle of power, impeccably dressed, praised in the press as model philanthropists and pillars of society. They donated to charities, rubbed shoulders with politicians at lavish galas. And now I discovered that behind those polished masks was a vast, meticulously hidden criminal empire. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. The car swerved slightly as my hands shook. If everything my father left behind was true, then the people I had called Mom and Dad for years were actually monsters. And the most terrifying part, I had lived beside them all this time without the slightest clue. Amid the chaos, memories of the years my father and I had relied only on each other rose like a warm current cutting through the freezing storm. I remembered his love, never spoken aloud but shown in 1,000 quiet acts throughout his life. When I was little, after Mom's death, which I now knew wasn't a car accident but murder by his enemies, Dad raised me alone. He never said "I love you," but he always waited outside the school gate in the rain, holding the old umbrella over me first while he got soaked. "Let's go home, son," he'd say simply, then dry my hair with his handkerchief. Evenings after long days at the office, no matter how exhausted he was, he always saved the best portion of dinner for me. The bigger piece of meat, the fuller serving of potatoes. "Eat up. You're still growing," he'd murmur, then sit across from me, watching me eat with the faintest, gentlest smile. And he chose lifelong solitude just so I could have peace. I begged him countless times to move in with us, but he always refused. "I like my own life," he'd say. Now I understood. He was terrified of dragging me into his darkness. He sacrificed everything, locked himself in that little old house, kept that room sealed, all so I could have a normal life. I cried silently behind the wheel, tears blurring the streetlights. "Dad, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were just a lonely old man?" Then memories of Diana flooded in, sweet and agonizing at once. I remembered the first time I met her in a cafe near campus. I was 22, buried in auditing textbooks. Diana walked in, long black hair, smile bright as Chicago morning sun. She accidentally knocked over my latte, panicked, and stammered. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me buy you another one." I laughed, and that was the beginning. We fell in love honestly, defying every difference in status and background. I was just an ordinary guy, son of a retired accountant. She was the heiress of West Industries, raised in mansions, educated in Europe. But our love was never about calculation. We walked Chicago streets in the rain, ate ice cream in the park, whispered about the future. "I'm not rich like your family, but I promise to love you forever," I told her. She hugged me tight. "I don't need anything else in the world but you, Joaquin." Clumsy kisses, weekend getaways, everything was pure, untouched by power or money. But the day we decided to marry, hell began. The West family opposed it furiously, doing everything they could to stop us because they saw my father and me as low-class trash unworthy of their bloodline. Franklin summoned me to his gleaming office at West Industries' downtown skyscraper. He sat behind a massive polished desk, looking at me like I was an insect. You think you're worthy of my daughter? A nobody auditor, son of a broke old accountant. We have standards, Joaquin. Stay away from her. Mariana was more refined but no less cruel. She invited me to a private dinner and smiled thinly. You know, Diana is used to a certain lifestyle. What can you possibly give her? A tiny apartment? A mediocre life? At the wedding, their contemptuous stares and barbed remarks cut deep on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Franklin and Mariana attended reluctantly, sitting in the front row with faces that said they were enduring a punishment. When my father walked in wearing his old but clean suit, Franklin whispered loud enough for me to hear. Look at that pathetic old pauper. How did Diana end up with that trash? Dad heard it. He only bowed his head, smiled at me, and said softly, Congratulations, son. I just want you to be happy and safe. I squeezed his hand, my heart breaking. Throughout the reception, they kept jabbing. Hope you can keep up with our lifestyle, Joaquin. We wouldn't want Diana to suffer. Diana pulled me into the garden, crying in my arms. I'm so sorry, they don't understand you. But the wounds never healed. They festered quietly over the years. Every family gathering at their mansion became mental torture. Constant comparisons, open disdain, thinly veiled insults. The first Christmas after we married, in their sprawling estate, Franklin raised his glass. To Diana and, well, her husband. Let's hope this year he earns more than an auditor's salary, eh? Laughter rippled through the room, eyes full of mockery. Mariana added with fake concern. How do you two even manage on that paycheck? Diana's used to the finer things. I swallowed the humiliation, forced a smile, but inside I burned. Each time I came home heavier, questioning my own worth. Yet Diana always stood by me, comforting me after every attack, making me believe her love was the one pure thing untouched by money or power. After every painful dinner, she'd hold me. Don't let them hurt you. To me, you only need to be you. She fought her parents for me, even limited contact when they went too far. When Leah was born, she whispered, Our daughter will have a happy life, not like my parents' world. I believed her. I believed our love was real. But now, driving through the dark, I stood on a cruel dividing line. On one side, the woman I loved more than life. On the other, the horrifying truth about her parents. If I exposed everything, what would happen to Diana? Does she know? Is she innocent? My heart ached like it was being torn in two. Dad's sudden death, the cold, watchful demeanor of Franklin and Mariana at the funeral, the letter that felt like a prepared last will. None of it felt like coincidence anymore. They had glanced at the coffin with fake grief, but their eyes scanned the crowd, searching. Now I understood. They were afraid Dad had left evidence behind. He wrote, Danger is closing in. He knew. He felt it coming. I started connecting every detail. The strange calls he received before he died, his unusual fatigue, the men in black at the cemetery. Dad had known his death was near. Was it really a heart attack? Too convenient. I shuddered. The car sped faster on the highway. I got home in a state of peak paranoia, but I forced myself to hide everything, putting on a normal face so Diana and Leah wouldn't worry. I pulled into the garage, took a deep breath, and walked in smiling. Diana was in the kitchen. Leah was drawing at the table. Leah ran to me, hugged my legs. I picked her up, kissed her cheek. What are you drawing, sweetheart? Daddy thinks it's beautiful. Diana came over, wrapped her arms around me from behind. You're late. Everything okay? I mean, with your dad's things. I nodded, voice steady. I'm fine, honey. Just cleaning up the house. We ate dinner, talked about work, about school, ordinary things, but inside my head was spinning, ears ringing with fear. Night fell. Everyone slept. Deanna breathed softly beside me, Leah peaceful in her room. I lay in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Sleepless nights stretched ahead, anxiety gnawing without pause. What will those shadows do next? What if they know I have the evidence? How will Diana react if she learns the truth? I tossed and turned, sweat soaking the pillow. A massive storm was quietly gathering over my life. I had to act, but for now I could only lie here and wait. The real nightmare had fully descended. In the days that followed, the feeling of dread never left me for a single second. On the surface, everything looked perfectly normal. I still went to my auditing job in downtown Chicago, still drove Leah to school every morning, still held Diana every night. But deep inside, I couldn't shake the constant sensation that my family was being watched, that an invisible pair of eyes followed my every move. It wasn't paranoia. I was certain of it. Whenever I drove, I checked the rearview mirror more often, scanning for unfamiliar cars tailing me. When I walked Leah to the nearby park, I felt a strange presence. Someone observing from a distance. What if they already knew I had the evidence? What would they do to Diana? To Leah? The thought sent ice through my veins as if an unseen hand were tightening around my throat. The anxiety gnawed at me from the inside like a monster. I knew exactly what I was holding. Secrets powerful enough to destroy Franklin and Mariana. Secrets that made me a target they would eliminate without hesitation, just as they had done with my father. Every night I lay awake picturing them breaking into the house, or worse, harming Leah. I couldn't let that happen. One evening, after another exhausting day at work, I pushed open the front door with the same forced smile I'd worn for weeks. Diana was standing in the living room, speaking in a low voice on the phone, her back to me, her posture unusually tense. "Yes, Dad?" "No, he's acting normal." "Okay, I'll keep an eye on him," she whispered. I froze in the doorway, silent, listening as unease spread through my chest like poison. She hung up, turned, and jumped slightly when she saw me. "You're home? I didn't hear the car." I kept my voice steady. "Who was that, honey? You look stressed." She hesitated, then gave a strained smile. "Just my dad. He was checking in." I didn't let it drop. "Checking in on what? Why do you look so worried?" She sighed and sank onto the sofa. "He was asking about you, whether you've been acting strange lately, changing routines, meeting anyone unusual. He said he's just worried about his daughter." I felt a jolt, like an electric shock. Franklin West, the man who had never once cared about my daily life except to mock it at family gatherings, was suddenly asking for detailed reports on my behavior? That kind of concern wasn't normal. Franklin didn't do anything without calculation. It confirmed what I already feared. They were suspicious of me now. If my father was right, if they had killed him, then I was next. I realized that sitting still and waiting would only leave me defenseless and cornered. I couldn't let them control the game. I had to take the initiative. I had to fight back. The next day, during working hours, I secretly contacted Elliot Crane, my closest friend from college, now a highly discreet private investigator who left almost no trace in the investigative world. Elliot and I had studied auditing together, but he had always preferred the thrill of surveillance and investigation. I had never mentioned him to anyone, not even Diana. I sent an encrypted message through a secure encrypted app. "Need to meet you urgently." He replied instantly, "Old Cafe, 2 p.m. Come alone." I took the afternoon off and drove to the little out-of-the-way cafe on the edge of Chicago where we used to hang out as students. The place was nearly empty. Elliot sat in the darkest corner, dressed like any ordinary office worker. Shirt, glasses, unremarkable. But I knew how sharp he really was. In a short, completely confidential meeting, I told him everything. My father's true identity, the locked room, the letter, his life as an undercover agent, the money laundering evidence, the photos of Franklin and Mariana. Elliot listened without changing expression, but his eyes lit up. "Jesus, Joaquin, this isn't a joke. Your dad was deep undercover, and West Industries, that giant empire, is neck-deep in organized crime?" I nodded and let him skim the copied USB. He concluded immediately that this was no small-time operation. "This is an international syndicate, possibly tied to the mafia and politicians. If Franklin even suspects you have this evidence, they won't hesitate to take you out." We carefully discussed every possibility. They might already be tracking me, hacking my phone, or planning something worse. We agreed on strict protocols. No phone calls, only encrypted messages, random meetings. Elliot took the job of quietly shadowing Franklin, Mariana, and everyone connected to the West family. He spoke softly but firmly. I'll use an invisible team. 0 footprints. You keep your life exactly the same. Go to work, drop off and pick up your daughter, have dinner with your wife, act like nothing's wrong. I nodded, heart pounding. What if they move first? He put a hand on my shoulder, eyes serious. I'll know immediately. But Joaquin, you've stepped into the fire now. And be careful with Diana, she might accidentally give something away. I left the cafe with a heavy weight on my chest, but for the first time I wasn't completely alone. The days that followed were a prolonged state of tension. I played the role of normal husband and father perfectly while terror gnawed at me constantly. Making coffee in the morning, kissing Diana goodbye, smiling as I dropped Leah at school, working, chatting with colleagues, cooking dinner, cuddling my daughter, holding my wife at night. But behind the mask, I was always on alert, checking for tails, scanning my phone for anomalies. Every strange noise at night jolted me awake. Diana noticed. You okay? You've been waking up in the middle of the night a lot. I forced a smile. Just work stress, babe. I'm fine, don't worry. But inside I was burning. The shadows were becoming more frequent. Black sedans parked a few blocks away. Unfamiliar men lingering at the supermarket. The net was tightening. About 2 weeks later, though it felt like 2 years, I received an anonymous email from Elliot. Subject line, check this now. I opened it at the office, hands shaking. The first lines made me go cold. I found it. Franklin met Wade on the day he died. File attached. According to Elliot's investigation, on the exact day my father died, Franklin had secretly visited him just hours before the fatal heart attack. Security footage near Dad's house showed Franklin's car parked nearby. They met for roughly 30 minutes. Then my father was gone. Attached was an audio file Elliot had obtained from a burner phone. Franklin's icy voice. If that precious son-in-law of mine shows any strange behavior, you know what to do. Eliminate him immediately, just like the old man. No traces. The other voice. Yes, sir. Natural heart attack, same as last time. I sat paralyzed, numb with horror. My father's death was almost certainly caused by the West family. Not coincidence, not chance, murder. Franklin had pressured him or poisoned him. And now I understood with chilling clarity that I was on the kill list too. That precious son-in-law was me. In that moment, every lingering doubt crystallized into brutal, undeniable truth. My father had been murdered. My mother had been murdered. And now they were coming for me. I slumped in my chair, tears streaming down my face. Elliot's final line. Be extremely careful, Joaquin. They're watching you very closely. I'm digging deeper. I deleted the email, heart thundering. From that second on, this was no longer a quiet investigation. It had become a war for survival against the West Empire. There was no turning back. I had to find a way to turn the tables. But how? Could I go to the police? Or had they already bought everyone? I drove home, mind in chaos. Diana greeted me. You look exhausted lately. I pulled her into a tight hug. I'm okay, love, just tired. But deep down I knew the storm had arrived. The days that followed were pure hell. Every morning I woke up, looked at Diana sleeping peacefully and Leah curled up with her favorite teddy bear. And terror squeezed my chest like a vice. I couldn't tell her. Not yet. I still went to the office as usual, still sat in front of cold, lifeless spreadsheets, but my mind never left the danger circling my family like a predator. I needed something ironclad, something impossible to deny. After endless nights thinking about my father's death, I realized that an undercover agent like Wade Moore would never leave this world without a final layer of protection. Dad always thought 3 moves ahead. He'd taught me that himself while playing chess. He had to have left a last shield, a hidden ace. I couldn't wait for Elliot to dig any deeper. Time was running out. The shadows were closing in tighter. Black sedans parked outside my office building, unfamiliar men lingering in the grocery store. The noose was tightening. I decided to return to Dad's old house one more time, hoping to find it. One late afternoon under a gray, heavy Chicago sky, I drove to the suburbs, heart hammering. I parked a block away and walked around through the back alley to avoid being followed. When I stepped inside, the familiar stale smell hit me. Old books, coffee, and the loneliness my father had lived in. I closed every curtain until not a single crack of light remained, double-locked the front door, then searched every corner with absolute vigilance. Under tables, behind bookshelves, even lifting the sofa cushions. Nothing unusual. But I didn't give up. Dad was a professional. He hid things masterfully. I started in the living room where he used to read the paper. My fingers ran along the old TV stand, checked the cables, then stopped at the air vent behind it. Something glinted under my phone's flashlight. My pulse raced. I unscrewed the vent cover with a small screwdriver, and there it was. A tiny camera, no bigger than a bean, expertly wired into the house's electrical system, pointed straight at the front door and the staircase. Dad had hidden a surveillance camera inside his own house. Why? I immediately connected it to the old computer in the locked room. The recording software opened, files organized by date. I scrolled to the day Dad died, hands shaking so badly I could barely click. The black and white footage from the day Wade passed made me freeze in horror. Dad was sitting in the living room looking exhausted, making coffee. Then a knock at the door. He opened it and Franklin West walked in, expensive suit, face like stone. They stood face to face. Dad's voice crackled through the tiny speaker. "What are you doing here?" I've kept silent. Franklin sneered. "You think I'm an idiot, Wade? Or should I use your real name, Agent? I know everything. Your real identity, the files you've collected. Where are you hiding them?" Dad stayed silent, eyes steady. Franklin stepped closer, voice low and menacing. "If you don't disappear, your precious Joaquin will end up just like his mother all those years ago. Remember? She died so tragically." Dad went pale but didn't back down. "You dare? Have you no humanity left?" Franklin gave a cold laugh. "I dared it with her. Why wouldn't I dare it with your pathetic son-in-law? Drink this. It's a vitamin I brought specially for your heart. Sudden cardiac arrest, nice and clean." He placed a small vial on the table and walked out, slamming the door. I collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming uncontrollably. My father had been forced to take poison disguised as a heart attack, to protect me. Because Franklin had threatened to kill me the same way he'd killed my mother. My mother, not an accident, but hunted down and murdered. This video was the final piece of evidence Dad had left, his last shield. Pain turned into white-hot rage that burned through my chest. They killed my parents, Franklin and Mariana, those sanctimonious monsters. I swore then and there I would make them pay, no matter the cost. With shaking hands, I copied the entire video onto a separate USB, then erased every trace from the computer. Before leaving, I put the camera back exactly as I'd found it. I stepped outside into the biting wind, but inside I was on fire. They would pay. As I drove back from Dad's house through the dark Chicago streets, I spotted Franklin's car, a gleaming black Mercedes parked 2 houses down from mine, headlights off, waiting. My heart slammed against my ribs. They knew I'd been there. I pulled into the garage, forcing myself to stay calm, fingers white on the steering wheel. The moment I walked in, the doorbell rang. Diana called from the kitchen. "Honey, you're home. Someone's at the door." I opened it. Franklin and Mariana stood there unannounced. Franklin flashed his fake smile. "Hello, son-in-law. Can we have a word?" Mariana stood behind him in an expensive dress, eyes like ice. Even though the video was still burning in my pocket and hatred roared inside me, I kept my face neutral mask and let them in. Of course. Come in, Mom, Dad. Diana, your parents are here. We sat in the living room. Diana brought water, visibly surprised. You came without calling? Is everything okay? Franklin waved a hand. Just a visit, sweetheart. But I need to speak with Joaquin privately. Diana glanced at me worriedly, then took Leah upstairs. I'll go check on the little one. When only the three of us remained, Franklin dropped the pretense. I know you've been going back to your father's house a lot lately, and I know you've touched things you shouldn't have. My heart skipped, but my face stayed calm. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just clearing out Dad's belongings. He smirked. Don't play dumb, Joaquin. You know exactly what Wade was hiding. The files, the evidence, everything that could hurt us. Mariana said nothing, just watched me like a snake, measuring every micro-expression. Franklin continued, voice even but dripping with menace. Your father's death was an unfortunate accident, wasn't it? Sudden heart attack happens to anyone. Accidents like that can happen again, anytime to anyone. He stared straight into my eyes. The threat was crystal clear. I swallowed hard, trying not to shake. Are you threatening me? He chuckled. No, just reminding you. For Diana's sake, we're leaving you alone for now. But if you keep digging into the past, contacting people, I won't stay patient much longer. Mariana gave a slight nod, her gaze sharp as a blade. They stood. Franklin patted my shoulder. Think carefully, son-in-law. Don't let everything fall apart. They left, leaving the air thick and heavy as lead. I understood it wasn't a warning, it was an ultimatum. The second they were gone, I knew I was officially on their kill list. They knew or strongly suspected that I had something. They'd been watching me for a long time. I collapsed onto the sofa, mind spinning. Diana came down. What did they want? You look like you've seen a ghost. I pulled her into my arms. Nothing, babe, just checking in. But inside I was boiling. I couldn't wait any longer. That very night, to save myself and my family, I made the irreversible decision. I had to go to the authorities. I slipped into my home office and sent the video file to Elliot through our encrypted channel. This is proof. Franklin murdered my father. Do something. Elliot called back immediately, voice grave. My God, Joaquin. This is ironclad murder, extortion, organized crime. I'm contacting a trusted contact at the FBI right now. Stay silent. Don't do anything stupid. I nodded into the empty room. Thank you. I'm running out of time. They're closing in. From that moment on, I knew the war against the West family had entered its final no-way-back phase. The FBI was now involved. This was no longer a game or a shadow investigation. I lay beside Diana that night, unable to sleep at all. Images flashed through my mind. Franklin in handcuffs, Mariana collapsing in tears, then waves of terror. If I failed, the price would be all our lives. Memories of my mother flooded back through Dad's letter. She had died because of them. Now it was my turn, and I would take everything back. The very next day, everything began to change. I was in the kitchen making coffee, trying to act normal for Diana and Leah when the doorbell rang. Diana glanced out the window. Who's here this early? I opened the door. Two men in utility company uniforms stood there, toolboxes in hand. Good morning, sir. We're from the power company. There's a report of irregular electrical activity in the area. We need to check your lines. I hesitated, but let them in. I didn't want Diana to worry. They walked around the house inspecting outlets and cables, but their eyes were too sharp, their movements too precise for ordinary technicians. Once Diana left to take Leah to school, they closed the door behind them and dropped the act. Mr. Joaquin Moore? We're federal agents, FBI. My heart slammed against my ribs. They flashed their badges, Special Agent Harris and Special Agent Lee. Your friend Elliot Crane contacted us. We're here about the evidence. They told me they had already reviewed Elliott's preliminary report and classified the case as large-scale organized financial crime involving murder. Agent Harris, a stern middle-aged man, sat down at the kitchen table. "The video you sent is crystal clear proof of homicide. Franklin West threatened and coerced your father into taking his own life. Combined with the money laundering files your father compiled, this is a massive network. International transfers, shell companies, bribery. West Industries isn't just a corporation, it's a criminal organization." Agent Lee, younger and calmer, added, "We've verified the footage is authentic, no signs of tampering. Your father, Wade Moore, was a deep-cover federal agent. We cross-referenced his real identity through archived records. He sacrificed everything." I sank into the opposite chair, hands trembling around my hot coffee mug. "They'd known about Dad all along?" "Yes. He left it all for me, so justice could finally be done," I whispered. The two agents exchanged a brief look and nodded. Their tone stayed professional, but a flicker of sympathy crossed their eyes. They asked me to surrender every original piece of evidence so they could open a full federal case. The USB drives, the video, the files, everything. "We need the originals for court. Your family will immediately be placed under protected witness status." I hesitated for only a second. This was my father's legacy, then handed everything over. They checked quickly, nodded. "Good. From now on, you're our key witness. We'll protect you discreetly." Right after I turned over the evidence, my family was quietly placed under federal protection. They installed hidden surveillance inside the house, tiny cameras, silent alarms, and explained, "Every move you make is monitored. Work, school drop-offs, we'll be watching from a distance. Do not call local police. Use only this number." They gave me a burner phone and warned, "Tell no one, not even your wife. Safety first." On the surface, my life continued exactly as before. Morning coffee, kissing Diana goodbye, dropping Leah at school, auditing spreadsheets, dinner with my wife. I still made Diana's coffee just the way she liked it, still laughed at Leah's drawings. But now every step I took was being watched by two sides. The FBI behind me, silently guarding. The West family in front, hunting me without mercy. Whenever I drove, I saw unfamiliar cars in the rearview mirror, but I knew FBI vehicles were farther back, tailing the tail. It felt like living inside a spy movie, except it was real. My heart raced constantly. Cold sweat broke out whenever I imagined Franklin finding out. The FBI worked fast and silently, verifying the video, tracing the financial trails Dad had documented. They updated me through the burner. "We're following the money through Cayman and Swiss intermediaries. Every transaction is now flagged. The video is the linchpin. It proves murder." I listened in my office, whispering into the disposable phone. They confirmed Dad's files were accurate, billions laundered through dozens of shell companies. Enough to bring the whole empire down. But I still couldn't tell Diana anything. Every time she looked at me with concern, "You've been so distant lately, everything okay?" I swallowed the truth and lied. "Just headaches from work numbers, babe." It tore me apart. She was innocent, but her parents... Meanwhile, cracks started appearing in the West Empire. Within days, one of their subsidiaries, West Real Estate, had its account suddenly frozen. I read the financial news at the office. Regulators seize assets over suspicious activity. My pulse raced. It had begun. Then a Panama-based partner company from Dad's files vanished overnight. CEO missing, accounts sealed. The first dominoes were falling. I stared at the stock app on my phone. West Industries shares plunged 5% in a single hour. For the first time, I felt their invincible fortress being chipped away, layer by layer. Inside the company, lower-level executives were being quietly summoned for questioning. Elliott, now liaising with the FBI, told me, "They're pulling in finance VPS one by one. No arrests yet, but the pressure is crushing." Rumors spread through Chicago's financial circles. West is under investigation, money laundering may be worse. Stock forums buzzed. I watched the red numbers on the screen and tasted something close to satisfaction. Franklin went into lockdown mode. Elliot reported he was firing senior staff, demanding signed loyalty oaths, cutting ties with old contacts. I pictured him in his glass tower, red-faced, screaming at terrified employees. Mariana quietly hired private investigators to dig into everyone around me. Elliot warned, "They're watching you even closer now, friends, colleagues, but the Bureau is blocking them at every turn." I shivered, yet felt a grim thrill. They were panicking. I knew the eerie calm was only the crust before the volcano erupted. Outside, Chicago kept rushing along. Traffic, pedestrians, cold wind off Lake Michigan. But in the shadows, a full federal task force had been activated, and the entire West criminal network was now in the crosshairs. For the first time, I truly felt I wasn't fighting alone. But it also meant there was no way back. Late that night, I sat alone on the balcony staring at the glittering city lights, heart tangled with fear and resolve. With the FBI behind me, I was stronger. But if anything leaked, the Wests would strike like cornered animals. Dad's voice echoed in my head. "Be strong, son." I will be strong. The days that followed passed in breathless suspense, as if I were standing on the edge of an abyss. Every morning I woke up and watched Diana preparing breakfast with her gentle smile, Leah scampering around the kitchen begging for grilled cheese sandwiches, and my heart tightened painfully. On the surface, life remained serene. I drove Leah to school, kissed my wife goodbye, then headed to my auditing office in downtown Chicago. The numbers on my spreadsheet still danced as usual. Colleagues still joked about morning coffee, but I knew everything was shifting beneath the surface. The FBI operated in complete silence, yet I could feel the movement. Short, clipped calls from Agent Harris on the burner phone, his voice flat and steady. "We're making progress. Stay normal." I hung up, heart pounding. Normal? How could anything be normal when I knew my in-laws were murderers and they were tightening the noose around me? The federal investigation kept expanding, and information began leaking out like water seeping through a cracked dam. At first, it was only whispers on private financial forums, but soon every major outlet ran the same headlines. West Industries faces billions in money laundering allegations. Mysterious Cayman Islands funds traced to Chicago headquarters. I opened my laptop at the office and scrolled through the big papers. Reporters camped outside West Tower, cameras flashing nonstop. I sat there, gripping the mouse so hard my knuckles went white, feeling as though I were watching a colossal tower begin to sway. The stock price plunged day after day. Billions in market value evaporated in a matter of days. I tracked the chart on my phone. Blood-red lines. From $150 a share down to $120, then $90 in a single week. Investors panicked and dumped shares. The Chicago exchange lit up with sell orders. Franklin and Mariana appeared constantly on television, denying everything, claiming a coordinated smear campaign. Franklin went on CNN in a flawless suit, voice artificially calm. "This is a vicious attack by competitors. West Industries has always been transparent. We will sue anyone spreading these lies." Mariana appeared on Bloomberg, eyes glistening with crocodile tears. "Our family is being unjustly persecuted. We trust justice will prevail." They urged investors to hold, insisting it was all market manipulation. "Stay with us, we will get through this," Franklin declared at a press conference. But for the first time, I heard his voice waver. Under crushing pressure from shareholders and banks, West Industries was forced to call an emergency shareholders meeting to calm the storm. The news spread like wildfire. The meeting would take place in a huge downtown Chicago convention center. Hundreds of shareholders, live cameras, the whole world watching. Agent Harris called me quietly. "Arrest warrants for Franklin and Mariana West have been signed. We'll execute them at the meeting. Do you want to be there?" I hesitated for a second, terrified, then nodded. "Yes, I have to be there." I knew the decisive moment had arrived. This was when the masks would fall, when justice would finally be served. But it was also the moment I would have to face Diana when she would learn the truth from me. her own husband. My heart ached at the thought of her eyes. On the morning of the meeting, I woke early and put on the suit my father had bought me for my wedding day. Diana held a small block of family shares, and I, by marriage, had the right to attend. We drove to the convention center together. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard sweat soaked my palms despite the air conditioning. Diana chatted happily about Leah and weekend plans. I could only nod, my mind in turmoil. The hall was enormous and packed. Major and minor shareholders, reporters crammed shoulder to shoulder, cameras flashing. No one in that room suspected I was part of the storm about to break. We sat in the middle rows. Diana squeezed my hand. "Are you okay? You look tense." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little nervous." Franklin personally chaired the meeting. He strode onto the stage with his usual aura of power, voice booming through the microphone. "Dear shareholders, we are here today to dispel these baseless rumors." He tried to project control, deep voice, confident gestures. Mariana handled media and shareholder questions, standing beside him with her polished smile. "We are fully committed to transparency. This is nothing but a conspiracy by jealous rivals." They kept reassuring the crowd, blaming malicious forces, showing slides of record profits and achievements. But the atmosphere was already boiling. Major shareholders began shouting questions. A heavy-set old man stood up, voice shaking with rage. "Why are our accounts frozen? Subsidiaries under investigation? We've lost millions." A middle-aged woman followed. "What about the irregular cash flows? Banks are cutting credit lines, explain." The hall grew electric with tension, whispers turned into shouts. Franklin's composure cracked. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his voice rose. "Everyone, please calm down. We are handling it." When the room split into open chaos, some still defending the Wests, others demanding resignations, I knew the moment had come. My heart pounded like war drums, hands ice cold. I stood up to the shock of everyone around me, including my wife. Diana grabbed my sleeve. "What are you doing?" I gently pulled free and walked down the aisle. All eyes turned to me. Someone whispered, "That's the West son-in-law?" I stepped onto the stage, voice trembling but resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Joaquin Moore, husband of Diana West, and I have the evidence that explains everything happening here." Dead silence, then the room erupted. I connected my laptop to the projector and displayed the proof after proof. Money laundering records, covert photos of Franklin meeting mafia figures, the video of my father being forced to poison himself. This is the truth about West Industries, money laundering, murder, manipulation. Franklin and Mariana West are behind it all. The hall exploded. Shareholders screamed, "Fraud! We've been robbed!" Reporters filmed frantically, flashes blinding, voices roaring. Franklin went white, shouting into the microphone, "Silence! This is slander!" Mariana rushed forward, voice shrill, "How dare you use fake evidence to smear us?" They publicly denied everything in front of shareholders and cameras, then turned the accusation on me. Franklin pointed a trembling finger. "This jealous son-in-law fabricated everything. He wants to steal my company. It's all forged." Mariana collapsed dramatically for the cameras, dabbing fake tears. "Our own son-in-law exploited our daughter to infiltrate and destroy us. We are the victims." The hall descended into pandemonium. Chairs toppling, people shoving. Franklin's eyes locked on me in fury and panic as he realized the game had slipped from his grasp. He lunged toward me, but security held him back. At the height of the chaos, the doors burst open. FBI agents stormed in, weapons drawn. "FBI! Nobody moved!" They charged the stage and seized Franklin and Mariana. Franklin struggled wildly. "Get your hands off me! Do you know who I am?" Mariana wailed. "This is a setup. My son-in-law framed us." Handcuffs clicked. They were dragged away in front of hundreds of shareholders and live television cameras. Flashes went berserk. The crowd roared. Franklin turned one last time, eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret this, you bastard." I stood there, heart about to burst, but a wave of relief washed over me. Justice had finally come. Then I looked down. Diana was frozen in her seat, realizing the man behind the entire catastrophe was me, the husband she had trusted completely for years. Her face drained of color, eyes wide with horror. "Joaquin, what are you doing?" Her voice shook. I stepped down, reaching for her. "Diana, I had to. They killed my parents." But she looked at me with a mixture of rage and unbearable pain, then silently turned and walked away through the chaos, leaving me standing alone in a sea of loneliness. She pushed through the crowd without looking back. I called after her. "Diana, wait, let me explain." But she vanished into the throng. The hall was still in uproar, but my world had just collapsed. Justice had arrived, but the price was the love of my life. I stood there amid the shouting, the blinding camera flashes, the clatter of handcuffs as FBI agents dragged Franklin and Mariana away. Reporters surged toward me, microphones thrust forward. "Mr. Moore, any comment? Was this personal revenge?" Agent Harris placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Time to go, sir. We'll take you home." I nodded mechanically, legs heavy as lead. The FBI SUV carried me through the pitch-black Chicago night, headlights slicing the darkness with its headlights. On the drive, my mind spun with the image of Diana turning her back on me, her gentle smile replaced by raw pain. I called her over and over, the phone rang into empty voicemail. "Diana, I'm sorry. Please let me explain." No answer. The house was silent when I arrived. Leah was sleeping over at a neighbor's. Diana was gone. I collapsed onto the sofa, buried my face in my hands and cried. Justice for my parents, but I had lost my wife. The price was too high. That same night, late, I heard the key turn in the lock. Diana stepped inside, face pale, eyes swollen from crying. Leah was already asleep upstairs. We stood in the living room, only a few feet apart, yet 1,000 miles away. The silence stretched, thick as the air before a storm. Diana broke first. All the pent-up emotion exploded like a dam bursting. She whirled around, tears shining. "How could you do this to my parents? How could you hide everything from me? You investigated them, sent them to prison, and I knew nothing? Joaquin, you're my husband." Her voice cracked. Her trembling hand pointed at me. I stepped closer. "Diana, please listen." But she backed away, voice rising. "Listen to what? How long have you been planning this? Since the day we got married, you destroyed my parents and ruined everything." I saw the pain in her eyes, not just anger, but utter despair. To her, I had used her love and trust as a weapon, turning her into the perfect legal ticket into the West family for my revenge. "You used me as a shield. Was our love just a tool to get inside West Industries? Was I your entry pass into the family? You planned it all from the start, and I was the idiot who believed you." I tried to explain, voice shaking. "It wasn't like that, Diana. I only wanted the truth about my father's death. They murdered him, and my mother too. I discovered everything after the funeral completely by accident. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I love you with all my heart." But to Diana, every word sounded like another calculated lie. She shook her head, tears streaming. "Love? You call this love? You hid it from me for months. You met detectives, worked with the FBI, and never told me a single word. Who do you think I am, Joaquin? Some fool you could deceive?" She looked at me like a stranger. "You walked into this marriage carrying darkness, didn't you? Or the moment you found out, you chose silence so you could plot revenge. I was the last to know in my own family. I was the one left out." Her voice broke with bitterness. "You made me the biggest fool in this whole story." The deepest wound, she said, wasn't her parents' arrest. It was that the person she trusted most in the world had lied to her. Choking back sobs, she whispered, "I could have accepted that my parents were guilty. If they committed crimes, they should pay. But you were my husband, the one person I trusted completely. I shared everything with you, and you treated me like an enemy. That's the knife in my heart." She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I knelt in front of her, trembling, and finally told her everything. My father, the undercover agent, the secret files, the video, the death threats aimed at me. They murdered my father. They murdered my mother. Franklin forced Dad to poison himself to save my life. I have proof. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it to protect us, to protect you and Leah. I spoke through choking sobs, tears falling. But the truth, however real, could not repair the trust I had shattered. I begged her to understand that I had no other choice. Do you think I wanted this? They took my parents from me. I couldn't stay silent. But I never wanted to hurt you. I chose justice. For our family. Diana lifted her tear-streaked face, the faith in her eyes completely broken. Justice? Or revenge? If you truly trusted me, we could have faced it together from the moment you knew. But you chose to hide it. That means you never trusted me. How can I live with a husband who doesn't trust me? I was speechless. In despair and fury, she said the words I feared most. I can't stay with you anymore, Joaquin. I need time. No, I need this to end. I want a divorce. I can't live with this betrayal. Her voice shattered between tears and rage, and in that moment I knew our marriage was truly over. That same night, Diana quietly packed a small suitcase and left the house without looking back. Leah slept on, unaware her family was breaking apart. I clung to her in panic. Don't go, please, for Leah's sake. Diana paused for a second, but didn't turn. Her voice was hoarse. I'm taking our daughter. You, take care of yourself. The door closed behind her with a dry thud, and from that moment the house was forever missing someone. She called a cab, dragged the suitcase across the floor, stepped into the night. I stood alone in the dark living room, feeling the full, terrible price of justice. My own family torn apart beyond repair. The door slammed, tires screeched away into the night. I collapsed, sobbing. The house was empty, only the clock ticking. I had lost her. In the days that followed, West Industries was completely frozen, subsidiaries raided. I read the headlines. FBI storms headquarters, seizes documents, employees interrogated. The empire collapsed like a house of cards. Franklin and Mariana were held without bail, questioned for weeks as layer after layer of crimes was peeled away. Money laundering, financial manipulation, contract killings. Under the weight of the video, Dad's files, and witness testimony, Franklin finally confessed his role in Wade's death and the events that killed my mother years ago. The trial lasted weeks, packed courtroom, cameras flashing outside. I sat in the witness box and told everything. Dad, the video, the files. The West lawyers fought, but the evidence was overwhelming. Verdict: Franklin West, life imprisonment without parole for murder, money laundering, and running a massive criminal enterprise. Mariana West, 28 years for conspiracy, aiding and abetting, evidence tampering. The gavel fell. The gallery erupted in applause. West Industries officially dissolved, assets seized after decades of power. Headlines screamed, "West Empire crumbles." I had justice for my parents. But when the sentence was read, I no longer felt the relief I had imagined. I sat there, listening to the years handed down, and felt only emptiness. This victory had cost me my marriage. Diana never came to court. She never contacted me again. I returned to daily life, work, picking up and dropping off Leah. We now shared custody, trying to be both mother and father to her. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" Leah asked, eyes shining. I stroked her hair. "Mommy's working far away, sweetheart. But she loves you so much." The house that once rang with laughter was now cold. Diana's absence left a void nothing could fill. I tried countless times to reach her, to explain, to beg her back. Calls unanswered, messages unread. I sent handwritten letters. "I was wrong to hide it from you. I did it to keep us safe. Please come home." Silence. Eventually, I learned through the divorce lawyer that she had moved to California, started a new life, and cut me out completely. The divorce papers arrived. I signed them with tears in my eyes. At night, after Leah was asleep, I often sat alone in the dark, facing the cold, lingering taste of victory. I looked at old family photos and cried quietly. I had justice. But I had lost happiness. Dad, did I do the right thing? A year passed after the trial, and my life settled into a quiet, almost mechanical rhythm. Chicago remained the same, bustling streets, the cold wind off Lake Michigan slapping my face every morning, and the auditing job waiting for me with its endless, soulless numbers. I lived for my daughter. Every day revolved around work and caring for Leah in a calm but hollow routine. Leah was now 7, growing like a weed, with her mother's long black hair and a smile that melted me. She loved fairy tales, and I told her stories of brave heroes, but there was always an empty space inside me. No Diana laughing in the kitchen, no arms wrapping around me from behind while I washed dishes. The spacious villa felt cavernous now. Every corner reminded me of her. The sofa where we used to watch movies, the rose garden she had planted, now overgrown with weeds because I couldn't bring myself to tend it. The pain of losing Diana lingered like a half-healed scar. It throbbed whenever I brushed against it. I missed her desperately. Her smile, her voice, the way she called my name softly at night. But I no longer tried to pull her back. I simply carried the love in silent waiting. The divorce was finalized. We shared custody of Leah, but Diana rarely came to pick her up. She had moved to California and started a new life teaching again. I respected her choice, even though it cut like a knife. On sleepless nights, I sat on the balcony watching the city lights twinkle, wondering if she was happy. Sometimes I dreamed she came home only to wake up to cold emptiness. Work helped me forget for a few hours. Numbers, meetings, routine. But the moment I stepped through the door, the void rushed back. Leah asked about her mother less often now, but her eyes grew sad whenever she saw old family photos. "Mommy's busy with work, sweetheart," I said, hating myself for the lie. All of this was because of me, because of the truth I had chosen. I tried to fill the days, art classes for Leah, weekend trips to the Chicago parks, even a few awkward dates that went nowhere. My heart still belonged to Diana. Friends told me, "You have to move on, Joaquin. Justice is done. Now find happiness." But what happiness is there without her? I reread the accounting books Dad left behind, now knowing they had only been cover. I visited my parents' graves often, standing before the stones and talking. "I got justice for you, but I lost Diana." The wind felt like Dad's quiet comfort. 1 year, 365 days of loneliness, but I stayed strong for Leah. She was my only light. Her laughter filled some of the emptiness. Then, one unexpected day, exactly 1 year after everything fell apart, Diana appeared at my door. It was a Chicago autumn afternoon, golden leaves drifting down, wind cool and crisp. I had just picked Leah up. She was drawing in the kitchen. The doorbell rang. I opened it and my heart stopped. Diana stood there. Her face was thinner, eyes tired, but the old anger was gone. Her hair was shorter, clothes simple, yet she was as beautiful as the day we met. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Leah ran out, threw herself into her mother's arms, and burst into happy tears. Diana knelt, hugging her fiercely. "Mommy's home, baby. I missed you so much." I stood frozen, tears rolling down my cheeks, unable to believe my eyes. She looked up at me, voice soft. Can we talk?" We sat in the living room while Leah played in her room. The air was heavy, but the rage from that night was gone. Diana spoke first, voice trembling. "After the trial, I thought about everything for a long time. I moved to California, lived alone, read every article, watched the video you showed again and again. I finally understood. The crimes were my parents. Money laundering, murder. They deserved punishment. And you were just another victim in a much bigger tragedy." She wiped her tears. "I used to think you used me, but now I know you discovered the truth after your father's funeral." You never planned it from the beginning. You were only trying to protect our family." I sat silent, heart pounding. She admitted she had been selfish, seeing only her own loss and forgetting the pain of losing both parents that I had carried since childhood. "I only saw my mom and dad taken away, but I forgot your father was forced to die. I was selfish, Joaquin. I'm sorry. I was too moved to speak at first. I apologized over and over for hiding the truth, for hurting her. But I also told her I had never stopped loving her, not for a single day." I took her hands, voice shaking. "Diana, I was wrong to keep it from you. I was terrified of losing you, terrified of dragging you into danger. I'm sorry I caused you pain, but this past year I never stopped loving you. I miss your smile every single day, the way you held me." Tears fell. Our love was never a tool. It's the most real thing I've ever had. Diana cried too, squeezing my hands. "I know now. And I still love you. I was wrong for not listening, for walking away without giving you a chance. I asked if we could start over, no more secrets, no more lies, just family and truth." Diana said, "Can we try again? I swear I'll never hide anything from you again. Let's rebuild our home. For Leah, for us." She cried harder and nodded. "Thank you. I forgive you. Let's start over." We held each other and sobbed, the familiar warmth returning after a year of cold absence. Leah ran in, saw us hugging, and giggled, "Yay, Mommy and Daddy made up. Our family is happy again." She jumped into our arms, and the three of us held one another while laughter echoed through the house that had been silent for so long. Slowly, our family found its rhythm again. Diana moved back in. We rearranged furniture, repainted walls, a quiet symbol of a fresh start. She went back to teaching. I kept auditing. But now we shared everything. In the evenings, we talked about the past, about the pain. "Tell me about your dad," she said, and I did, tears falling, but my heart lighter. Leah was happiest. She drew a picture of the three of us holding hands, and we hung it on the wall. On weekends, we walked Chicago again, ate ice cream in the park, just like when we were dating. The scars remained. Sometimes Diana grew quiet, thinking of her parents. I did too, thinking of mine. But we faced them together without secrets. One day, the three of us visited my parents' graves. The suburban cemetery was quiet, autumn wind cool, golden leaves drifting down. We brought roses, Mom's favorite, and placed them on the stones. Leah held my hand. "Are Grandma and Grandpa here, Daddy?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. And they love you very much." Standing there, I looked back on the whole journey. The locked room with its hidden safe, my father's staged death, the truth exploding at the shareholders' meeting, the unbearable losses. Memories flashed like film frames. Dad's funeral, Franklin's cold eyes, the poison video, the trial, Diana walking away. I knelt and whispered, "Mom, Dad, I got justice for you, but the price was almost too high. I realize justice can right wrongs, but it sometimes leaves wounds that never fully disappear. I got justice for my parents, yet I nearly lost Diana, nearly lost my family. The scar still aches, but it taught me to cherish the present. Only by facing the truth, by paying whatever price our choices demand, can we move forward with peace." I faced it. Hiding almost cost me everything. Honesty has given me peace. I took Diana's hand, watched Leah playing nearby, and silently promised to live an honest life with no more shadows. The only way I knew to honor my parents. The story ends with our little family leaving the cemetery in the late afternoon light, leaving behind a past stained with blood and tears, walking toward a quiet but genuine new beginning. Leah ran ahead laughing. Diana leaned her head on my shoulder. The setting sun painted the path golden like a promise of tomorrow. Chicago waited for us, no more secrets, only love.